Welcome to another edition of the Sim Racing Garage. I'm Barry Rowland, and in this episode, we're going to be reviewing the R1 Sim Racing wheel from Turn Racing. At 300 millimeters in diameter and sporting the same grip design on the custom Audi R8 wheel that we reviewed a few months ago, this is a rim that I think will be able to be used with a lot of different cars and still give the racer a good feel for those cars, mainly in the GT and single-seater class. Now let's put this wheel through the SRG's review process and see how it does. So let's get to it. So now let's take a closer look at the R1 wheel. You know, a few months back I did a review on my Turn Engineering, of course it was Turn Engineering at that time, and he sent me the R8 wheel, and I really like that wheel, still have it, and I really like the grip on it, and I like the 300 millimeter spacing. It was just one of those wheels that you just felt kind of like at home when you were using it right away. And I liked it so much, I asked Zach at the time, I said, do you think that maybe sometime in the future you could just make a steering wheel that we could attach a button plate to and use the same type of grip that is on that Audi, and also the 300 millimeter spacing, because you really can't find an open wheel 300 millimeter racing wheel, at least as far as I've looked. I've checked with OMP, I checked Momo, I checked Sparco, and I did that recently just before I started shooting this video, just to make sure they haven't come out with one. I also looked at the Sport lines, the NRG wheels, and whatever else I could look up and find, or try to find a suede race type wheel that was open and at 300 millimeters. And most of the open wheels that you find are like max 270, maybe a 280. And yeah, for an all-arounder, I think 300 millimeter, at least, you know, to me anyway, I'm sure there's going to be people who disagree with that, is a good all-around kind of wheel size. You can use it in, you know, the tin tops, you can use it in GT wheels, you can use it in even in the Formula wheels, because it is an open wheel. And even though Formula, obviously most of those are about 280, and some of the prototype cars that you see at Le Mans, you know, they're like 280. But again, I'm talking about a general all-arounder, and I think the 300 millimeter width kind of falls in that category. At least it does for me. Anyway, so here it is, the R1 wheel, and again, very nicely done. Suede leather. You see, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this, and it's all a glue up here. He does this all himself by hand, and he makes the frame. This is an aluminum plate that the frame or the midsection is made out of, and it's a little over 3 millimeters thick, and it's got some nice counterboard holes in it so that we can actually put screws in it that way. I have a plate that I'm actually going to be putting on top of this that I actually got from him also when I saw that he had it, because I like running little plates on there just for the carbon plates, just so it's just not all metal. Not that there's anything wrong with the metal, it's just one of those extra things you can do. Really not much to see in a steering wheel, as you might imagine. Suede leather, it's a glue up, and yeah, nicely done though. You can see the tops here. All this is very nicely done. And gluing up leather onto a wheel, I don't know how many of you guys ever try to do that. And I've done that a couple of times to fix some wheels, and I've even cut some wheels down and put leather back on. It can be a bit of a pain. So it's a pretty labor intensive thing to do that. Anyway, yeah, and it's got the same grip that is on that Audi R8 wheel that I have. And I love that grip. It just feels the hand, you know, it's just one of those wheels that you feel at home when you grab it. And you go, wow, this really feels good. And again, being at 300 millimeters, it allows me to drive a lot of different cars without thinking that I'm way out of line, you know, with driving the car with this wheel, even if I drive the Formula wheels. So, not much else to see here. And of course you can see it's got some scars on it, but I've already been driving it, so it's, you know, you tend to scratch things up and mar things a little bit when you're using them. But yeah, other than that, yeah, it's really a great feeling wheel, and not much to see here. It's actually, I did weigh it, it's 796 grams, or 1 pound and 12 ounces. And again, this is a 70 millimeter standard bolt pattern that we can bolt whatever button plate we want to it. Now, I have a button plate I'm going to use for this wheel, and it is the fabulous Martin Asher button plate with the clutch paddles on it. Really just a work of art in its own right. And this is actually a C26M. So this will be, see if you can read that there. This is actually the medium size button plate. that Martin Asher produces. And I did try a large, and it just almost fit, but it just didn't work. It was a little bit too big for the bottom part down here. But this one, obviously, is going to bolt on quite well. And we'll see that once I get the wheel set up. And also, I told him to give me one of these, so I ordered this. And this is a nice, again, about a little over 3 millimeter carbon fiber plate, and a very nice weave. This is a very tight plate. It's got that tinky sound to it, which is, it sounds like it's glass almost. So, and that's just one of the little tests I do. I always take something and hang my carbon fiber up. I don't know if you've ever done this, and you can tell by the sound. You can hear that. It's got that tink sound to it, which means it's very, very solid. And I like the little logo he's got in here. He's actually routed this out or machined this out inside and filled it in with some yellow paint. Again, this is very nicely done. And we have the counterbore holes up there so that we can run our, which I love to run on these wheels, our flathead screws, which are these guys, so that when they fit down in there, it's nice and flat. Very custom looking. Right. So what we'll do next is go ahead and I'm going to put my button plate on. I'll put this plate on, and I'm going to use my usual Q1R wheel side quick release adapter. And again, this is also a 70 millimeter pattern adapter. Right. So what we'll do is get that put together, and when we come back, we'll see how that looks. So now we have the button plate mounted to the steering wheel, and we have our carbon fiber cover plate on there with the cool Turn Racing insignia on there. And I have to say, this is a pretty good looking wheel, I think. Not, you know, it doesn't hurt to have an Asher button plate bolted to it, obviously. But first of all, once you get the button plate, it doesn't matter which button plate you have, and a quick release like we have the Q1R here, then it adds obviously some substantial weight and presence to the wheel. Then it starts feeling to me like a real steering wheel once we have that on there. And yeah, I can say that the reach is good for me on the shifters, and of course it might not be for everyone in as far as if you have a Martin Asher button plate, but most you can actually space these back if it's too close, or if it's too far away you could bring it back in by putting it on the other side, things like that. But for me, it fits pretty good right out of the box, which is very fortunate. And yeah, again, this part here I forgot to mention in the closer look segment of the video. This is actually a flat black powder coating that he's putting on this aluminum section of the wheel. And you can see these carbon fibers are not high gloss. They're like a semi-gloss finish on both the button plate down here and the cover plate. And you can see just how flat black that is, but I think it gives a really cool contrast to the way the wheel looks. So yeah, I'm real happy with the results so far of what we got here. It just looks like a let's go racing type of wheel. And again, it just feels, like I said before, in a closer look, it just feels right in your hand. It just, you know, when you grab this thing, it just feels right for some reason. All right, so again, very nicely done wheel, and we're going to do some quick driving video on it because we have to do that here at the SRG, and just take it for a spin and see how the grip feels. I'm pretty sure I'm going to like it because I like the Audi, and it's the exact same thing. But yeah, it's, again, this is a very labor-intensive wheel to build, and he's doing this as a production wheel now. I mean, just the leather layup alone, like I said in the closer look, it can be very tedious and unrewarding task to glue this leather onto a wheel. And if you've ever tried that, like I said earlier, you'll know what I'm talking about. Right. Anything else we want to talk about? Oh yeah. First off, before I go driving, let's talk about the size of this button plate and how it relates to the wheel. That way, if you guys want to get one of these wheels, then you'll know what you have to work with as far as dimensions on the button plate. Now, this Martin Asher button plate, we'll start here, from this bottom edge here, right down here on the very flat bottom part, up to the uppermost part over here where the button is, that is actually 5¼ inches, or 130 millimeters. So that's the height dimension on it. And you can see we still got a lot of clearance there. It looks like another at least 10 millimeters down here that are clearing the bottom part of the wheel. So again, I put the large Asher button plate against the wheel, and it just barely couldn't make it past the bottom part of this wheel. Otherwise, it fit fine. So you just have to be mindful of that. Now, also, we'll go from the bottom dimension down here, from the widest part down here over to the widest part over here. I've got that at 6 3/8 inches, or around 165 millimeters. Now, that's not exact to the millimeter or half millimeter or anything like that, but it will give you a general idea of what you're working with or what you have to work with as far as space. And from this side over here all the way to the other side over here, and you can see we still have plenty of room besides that where this wheel is actually turning towards itself. That is actually 7 1/8 inch between there, or 180 millimeters. Right. So now you guys know the dimensions of this button plate, so you'll know you can measure a button plate if you have one, or you're going to make one, or whatever the case may be, so that you know that it will fit this. And of course, with the 70 millimeter spacing that is standard across the industry. Right. Again, I really like the way this wheel is shaping up in the way it looks. I don't know if you guys do, but yeah, this is something I'd like to have on my rig to drive most of the time. So what we'll do next is go ahead and put this on the rig and do a little driving and see what we think. So here we are in iRacing in the Renault Formula 2.0, and again, this is just a short driving segment video, just to give you a quick shot of me driving something with this wheel, because there's really not much else that I can show. And using this in the Formula 2.0, and also used it in another Formula car, I forget which one it was, and yeah, it felt like this is the kind of wheel that, or the kind of grip and wheel and spacing that is comfortable in that kind of car. Even though Formula rims are 270 to 280 millimeters in diameter, this 300 millimeters is only 10 more millimeters on each side, so it doesn't feel like I'm too far away from what I should be actually driving in a real car. And again, being simulation, there's going to be some compromises we have to make. Now, I also used this wheel in the entire GT line of cars, trying on different cars, the Ferraris, the Fords, the Mercedes, and so forth, the Audi, and also in the prototype cars, and it felt real good there on those cars too. And again, with the theme of this wheel, or this rim, being that I'm trying to find a rim that is comfortable to me, that I like the grip of, that I can use across multiple platforms, or as far as race cars, and not feel too far out of sorts as far as, well, I got this 300 millimeter oval, or rather round wheel, and yeah, driving a Formula car with that, it can be done. It can be done quite well, actually, but just for the feel, and yeah, it just feels a little bit better when you have a wheel like this. Now, as far as going to the oval cars on both dirt and regular concrete or asphalt ovals, yeah, a round steering wheel is really what you want there, or at least something with a top hoop on it, top rim section, not an open rim like this one, because you're moving the wheel around a lot when you do that, especially on the dirt stuff. And of course, also that applies, I think, to rally cars. When we're driving those, you need to be able to have a lot of different positions as you're spinning the wheel around when you're sliding. So yeah, for that kind of thing, then yeah, an oval type of wheel would certainly be better. This would be very difficult to use, I think, because you don't have a top grip anywhere on it. But for everything else, and that's typically what I drive mostly, I don't drive too much oval, and yeah, unless it's in like the Dallara for and again, we're back to the Formula type car, then yeah, then it fits well there, but not in like a NASCAR car, the Sprint series or the Xfinity series, or a truck in that series. So yeah, it is achieving the purpose here, and that is, again, to me, to have a one wheel I can use across a lot of different cars, and again, not to feel like, oh man, this is a terrible wheel to use on this car. So yeah, that's about it, as far as driving the different cars with this rim. Again, I really do like the grip that's on this rim. It's kind of a little bit fatter grip than, say, the Sport line wheel that I have, and that's a 300 millimeter also. And again, being 300 millimeter, to me, puts it in that sweet spot to be able to use it across all these different cars and still feel like a good wheel in your hand. And of course, being 70 millimeter hole pattern on here, we can bolt whatever button plate we want to it. And again, I'm using the Martin Asher C26M button plate, which is the medium button plate with the clutch option on it. And I really like this, so I can use it in a lot of different cars that require the clutch launches or launching from a standing start. So anyway, yeah, I really like this wheel, and it's doing the job that I thought it would do. And again, the only open 300 millimeter I can find that's not custom made as far as you cutting a wheel down yourself, and which I've actually done to a sport line. And even though I prefer the grip of this one over the sport line, it kind of accomplished the same thing. But then again, a sport line is $160, and then you have to do the cutting yourself, and then you have to glue the suede back on, and yeah, it can be quite the pain or quite the project, however you tend to look at those types of do-it-yourself projects. Right. So what we'll do next is, let's just get to the final thoughts. Final thoughts on the R1 steering wheel from Turn Racing. I've been checking eBay and the usual steering wheel manufacturers on a regular basis for an open style steering wheel that is 300 millimeters in diameter. Ever since I did my review on the Turn Racing Audi R8 wheel, I've wanted to get a blank wheel with the same diameter and grip design. The R8 wheel was one that had the feeling that was, well, just right to me. Now my search is over though. The R1 wheel checks all the boxes for me when it comes to a versatile wheel that can be used with many different cars without giving you the feeling of driving with a wheel that seems, well, just wrong for the car being driven. Now, I used it for everything from GT cars to single-seat cars without feeling like I should be using a different rim. Of course, having a custom replica wheel for every car type we drive would be even better. But that's just not something most sim racers could justify. The R1, with its standard 70mm hole spacing, means that you can mount most any button plate that you desire. Now, I've chosen the excellent C26M button plate with the dual clutch function from Asher Racing, but any button plate will get you there as long as it has a 70mm hole spacing and can fit within the wheel spokes dimensions. Now, I have a wheel that I can leave on my rig that will cover a good range of cars that I like to run. And I think that the price of $179 for an essentially handmade rim is really not out of line here. So if you're looking for a rim that should cover a good range of cars that you can drive, you should give this wheel a hard look. I'm Barry Rowland. Thanks for watching the Sim Racing Garage channel. And don't forget to support the SRG by subscribing to our channel and visiting our website at simracinggarage.com.